So this is a really special evening for all of us on the call. And Dr. Axelrod and myself really look forward to this because although we spend so much time taking care of our patients and counseling them and educating them, we know that cancer for each person is very unique and not one size does not fit all. Every person's journey is different, and with the number of cancer survivors exponentially increasing, we have more and more people who have different stories and different needs and different outlooks on surviving cancer and living through cancer. As I mentioned, every person's journey is different and unique, and Faces of Cancer that we've been doing now for over 2 decades really gives us the unique and memorable opportunity to hear firsthand from some of these stories. We are so excited. We have a diverse, interesting, really wonderful panel this year. I think it's going to be really one of the best, and we're so happy for everyone who's joining us. So without further ado, I think Dr. Axelrod is going to introduce our first speaker, and we look forward to hearing their stories and then hearing a panel discussion at the end.
I'd like to introduce first James McGowan. James has been a higher education administrator since 1987 with a master's degree in applied and school psychology. I had a conversation with James before, and he agreed to be part of this. So I'm very, very happy. He's really funny. He's also taught several psychology courses as an adjunct professor and has given numerous business seminars and topics, including project management, team building, and using positive psychology for achieving wellness. So please, James, why don't you begin?
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone, especially the survivors. And I know we all can learn from the stories from listening to all of our survivors. As Deborah said, I've been teaching psychology courses for over 35 years. And about 20 years ago, I became familiar with the discipline known as positive psychology. And I found this new branch of psychology to be exciting, and I learned more about the principles used to help people build their strengths, enhance their optimism, create resilience, ultimately change their life for the better. So I developed college courses and seminars using these principles and ideas that I found some remarkable results with many students, most of whom were adult students. The principles help them deal with major life crises, PTSD in veterans, marital and family issues, and then even sickness and health problems. So I became really good at helping others cope with life through principles such as gratitude and resilience, optimism, self-esteem, faith, and happiness. I was completely caught off guard in May of 2020 when, after thinking I had carpal tunnel in the middle of COVID syndrome, that in fact I had brain cancer. Further tests indicated that the brain cancer was the result of esophageal cancer metastasizing to the brain. So not just one cancer, but two. Almost immediately, my priorities shifted 180 degrees. MRIs, PET scans, CAT scans, 4 brain surgeries, and chemotherapy became my new way of life. I was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer that was inoperable, but maybe treatable. My life expectancy was described in months, not years or decades. Note that all of my brain surgeries, including a craniotomy, cyberknife surgery, radiation, cranioplasty, were during COVID, which meant that I was dropped off the front door and could not be accompanied by my wife. To make things even more unsettling, everyone was wearing a mask, and I, being hard of hearing and very reliant on lip reading and my wife's ears, I was suddenly faced with trying to figure out what was being said. I felt for sure that I would accidentally agree to a frontal lobotomy. Nevertheless, I had 3 kids, a wonderful life, 2 grandchildren, a third on the way, my own home, a great job, all of which were thrown into question. I first felt a sense of urgency to get things done, read those books that I never got to read, listen to music that I hadn't listened to and heard in years, check my 401k and life insurance, call people I hadn't spoken to in a while. The pandemic only created even more social isolation because I was told to stay away from the public. After years of helping people with depression and teaching the signs, symptoms, and treatment, I finally was able to experience it firsthand. But I refused to let those negative emotions control me. I looked to my own lecture notes, books, and research and asked if those positive thinking strategies could really work for me. I first explored those virtues of faith and resilience, hope, gratitude, and optimism, and decided to make sure I lived my life, however much time I had left, according to those principles. Faith was my first place to start. I knew that I was going to need some sort of miraculous help to stay alive. Resilience was next as I stumbled from one brain surgery to the next while my right side functioning was quickly deteriorating. I became determined to use physical therapy and exercise to start my recovery. My sense of hope was directed at my incredible team of doctors, Marissa Ripstein, Lee Tesla, Todd Carpenter, who were trying to determine the best course of action for me. The nurses at NYU had all been incredible and huge sources of support and hope. I developed an enormous sense of gratitude, starting with all my friends and family that sent their best wishes and dinners and flowers. But that wasn't enough. I became so grateful for my best friend, my beautiful wife, who stayed with me through every doctor's visit, infusions, surgeries, and being by my side every day. That's what 39 years of marriage will get you. I appreciated my childhood, growing up, schooling, buying a home, getting married, having three incredible sons. I reflected and reflected more and more on what I had accomplished up to that point, from a family level, personal level, not job level. I wasn't thinking that way. I was thinking of where was I at that point personally. Um, I clearly had much to be thankful for, and finally, with that sense of optimism and positive thinking, that every new bump in the road or setback was going to be handled. I used my sense of humor to lighten up in those situations, and it always worked. I was given less than a year to live, but my oncologist said to me after about 15 months that they considered me, quote, an outlier, someone who has defied the odds and is holding their own. So my journey is not over, and I'm dealing with incidences of recurrences and diabetes and new prognosis, but I know I will succeed. Dr. Ripstein, my oncologist, once advised me, look, whatever you're doing, keep it up because it's working. It's working for me and it can work for you too, no matter what your life situation is. 1 year ago, I was given a break after 72 chemotherapy infusion treatments. So my body could strengthen and kind of get my energy back. In fact, as of 2 weeks ago, exactly 4 years later, after my initial 3 to 6 month terminal diagnosis, my latest PET scans show no sign of esophageal cancer, and the MRI shows no sign of brain cancer. I'm now
Wow.
blessed.
Amazing. Amazing.
That's kind of what I said. And I'm now blessed with 4 grandchildren. I'm still teaching, and I'm writing a book about my journey from being terminal to survival. I told my cancer support group, NYU Cancer Support Group, led by Karen Scheinkampf, that I refuse to accept a 3 to 6 month prognosis, but I'm on a 30-year plan full of gratitude, hope, faith, and a renewed purpose in life to others. Now, having that sense of purpose is the last piece of that positive psychology mindset. It's so important to see how much you can offer to others, family, friends, other survivors, giving hope to fellow survivors. Tonight's faces of cancers are not those of gloom and doom. They are faces of renewed purpose in life, grit and determination to fight, optimism, gratitude, and faith. Thank you. That really is a very difficult question because I really was completely floored with the kindness I received from the staff and the nurses. I would have to say the nurses at the infusion center up there on the 6th floor on Mineola Boulevard are outstanding. They became my friends. We talked You know, again, I'm going there every 2 weeks, so you get to know them.
I really appreciate, James, that you speaking to us. I'm going to introduce Isabella. So Isabella is a 23-year-old. She works as an assistant editor for Good Housekeeping, and you've been cancer-free for a little over a year. You spend your time running and reading.
I was diagnosed with clear cell cervical cancer in August 2022. And it was technically at stage 2B, but I had a very weird and like rare diagnosis because one, clear cell cervical cancer isn't like that common of a diagnosis, I was told. And then also my cancer wasn't caused by HPV, which is usually how people get cervical cancer. So yeah, so basically it all started with me going to the gynecologist when I was 21, and now I'm 23. And I had just graduated college, so I feel like my life was very, very like typical 21-year-old. And I only went to the doctor because I was getting really bad acne like all over my face. So I always joke that it started off as like such a superficial thing of me. I was like convinced that it was hormonal acne, which in a way I was kind of right. But yeah, and I wanted to have like my blood taken because I was just convinced like it was hormonal and I wanted to fix that. So I went to the gynecologist, and obviously they did like a routine checkup because I had just turned 21. And they called me that summer for like 2 months. And again, typical 21-year-old fashion, I had ignored my voicemails for 2 months. And finally they like caught me on the phone and they told me I had to come in immediately to do a biopsy because something didn't look right. And again, typical 21-year-old, I just really didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, this is annoying. It's getting in the way of like my summer plans. And I went in, and it was probably like the first time in my life where I had to experience like extremely painful doctor appointment. I've always just been like, in fact, I was a very healthy person, so it's the first time I was like experiencing any kind of like hard doctor appointment. But again, I assumed it was just like a one and done type of deal. Um, and then my friends and I all went on a vacation in Colorado, and I got a call from my doctor that was saying like, oh, when are you gonna be back home? Because she wanted to tell the news, but she didn't want to tell me while I was like in the middle of another state. So when I got back home from there, I got in a call explaining the diagnosis and like how we had to do another biopsy to see how, and do MRIs to see how big the tumor was, to try and determine like how far it had spread at that point, because this was like the first we had found it, because it's the first time I did any type of exam. So everything happened very quickly after that, because I went from just being like someone who had just graduated college. I was about the day that I got the call when I came back from Colorado was my first day of grad school. So I was like very excited to start that. I had just moved into the city, like in an apartment with my friend, and signed the lease. So it was like a sealed deal. And I remember when I got the call again, I kind of just didn't, I think I didn't understand like the seriousness of it. Being as young as I was, I just was like, oh, okay, I'll keep going through it. And I told everyone very quickly, like in my life. And I think to this day, everyone was very concerned, but was trying to be as calm as I was being, because I just think I didn't understand the severity of it yet. So yeah, after I got in the call, I went and met with a bunch of different doctors to try and pick who I was going to like have any treatment with. And I met Dr. Emlyn Avicki, who's my doctor now, and she's at NYU. And I knew I was gonna go with her. A lot of the other like oncologists in the gynecology space were surprisingly male doctors, and I really wanted to go with a female doctor. Um, and Dr. Vicky was just like the nicest doctor I've ever, still like one of the nicest people I've ever met. So I decided to go with her, and they laid out like the treatment plan, and started off with just doing like a very simple surgery of a cone biopsy. And basically during that surgery, they test the pathologist tests to see if it's spread or not to the lymph nodes, and how like deep, I guess, it's gone through the cervix. But if it spreads to the lymph nodes, then like it can spread throughout your whole body. So they do the cone biopsy first, and then I kind of just assumed I'd do that, be done with it, and all this would have been over like within a month. And when the results came back for that, that was when we found out that it was the cancer cells in the tumor is like a lot bigger than we had first thought. So the next step was doing a much bigger surgery of either something called a radical trachelectomy, where they remove the cervix, put in a new one, remove the two closest lymph nodes, and sew you back up. Or you can do a hysterectomy, which is the more ideal option if you have cervical cancer, because like then your risk of it returning is much lower. But again, you're asking a 21-year-old like the question of, oh, do you want to do the safer option of you not getting this cancer back and take out your uterus, or like keep the uterus in, try the radical trachelectomy, hopefully the margins are good and it hasn't spread, and then stay under like high surveillance until eventually you take out the uterus, because the uterus has to come out no matter what. So again, in typical 21-year-old fashion, I just signed off on the option of, I was like, I'll do the radical trachelectomy, and if it spreads, because while they're doing the surgery, they check to see how far it's spread. And I figured if it's spread to the uterus or to the lymph nodes and they have to take it out, then take it out, but keep it if you can. And
Isabella, can I just ask, at the time that you made obviously what's a really, really difficult decision, did you rely on friends and family to help you make this decision, or was it just Dr. Vicky? What was your process in terms of deciding?
I actually, so with decisions, I usually ask every single person that I know. I'm very notoriously an indecisive person, and for some reason with this, I didn't speak to anyone about it. I mean, like everyone knew that I had to make the decision, but I didn't ask for anyone's opinion on it. I kind of just went with the idea of like, I don't really know what I want to do when I'm like 30, 34, 35, however old I'll be. So I was like, I'll just bet on the chances of it not spreading or not returning, and I'm going to try and keep it. And if it has to come out, then it'll come out, but I didn't want to take it out. In terms of like family, I would say my parents were there at the hospital after I did like the bigger surgery, from like the moment visiting hours started to the moment that they ended, every single day that I was there. Because I ended up being there for a week, and then again a few months later, about a year ago now, because there was like kind of a complication after the surgery, and I got an infection in my fallopian tubes, and ended up in the hospital for another week. And my parents were always there, but other than that, Dr. Vicky, she always spoke up for me. And again, that was another reason why I really wanted to go with like a female doctor. Because even when I was in the hospital the second time, I had just gone to like a really close one to my house because I had gotten sick all of a sudden. And she was like on the phone speaking up for me because they weren't really like, I got to the hospital and the doctor I'm sure it's just a normal question, but he was asking if like I was just on my period and having cramps. And me and Dr. Vicky were like, obviously I wouldn't come to the hospital if it was just like some abdominal pain. Like, it was very painful and I was throwing up. So she's just always, I feel like, spoken up for me and like taken any of my concerns very seriously, which is always the nicest.
We're going to go on and we're going to introduce Van Dawn. Thanks, Isabella, very much for sharing your story. So Van Dawn is from Texas. You're 32 years old. You've been in New York for the last 7 years, and you are an artist who worked in fashion for the last 10 years. Van Dawn is a luxury fashion concept buyer, which I'd love to know a lot about because I don't think I have any sense of style for the last few years. And recently you've been freelancing as a brand manager. You're working on your own men's collection and brand. When you speak about your experience, you tell us what you've learned, what you can tell others, just to give some hope and courage, and even things that were kind given to you or things that you learned not to do.
First, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. You know, I have discovered since I've been on this journey of having cancer that speaking about it is healing. And any opportunity that I get to speak about it is a healing space for me. So thank you. I just want to say that because I truly appreciate it. It's also a scary space, so let's just say that too. But it's also a space that I know that is going to get me further in my journey. So I'm stepping into it with all the strength that I have and ready to go. So thank you. Um, okay, so I'm just gonna dive into it. I was diagnosed with FH deficiency kidney cancer. It is a extremely rare cancer that is usually seen in like older men, and there isn't a whole lot of research on it because it's not something that is seen often. So, when I was diagnosed with it, it was just a complete shock and extremely daunting because I just had no idea that this was going to be a part of my story, a part of my life. I In 2021, late that year, I had a random pain in the morning, and I then was woken up with just like crazy pains. I was throwing up, and I was in a roommate situation. So my roommate had knocked on my door and was just like, "Hey, Van, like I hear you. Are you okay? Like what's going on?" Like, it was really early in the morning, and at that point, I couldn't even speak. So he was just like, "You know what? Like we're gonna go to the hospital." Went to the hospital in Harlem, and at that point, they was telling me that it was just a kidney stone. They were saying that, you know, they gave me medication for my pain. They told me that the kidney stone would eventually pass and that I would be okay. So at that point, I listened to the doctors. I went on and thought it was a kidney stone and just continued on with my life. A few months later, maybe like 2 months, I began to experience urine retention and on and off like blood in my urine. And, as soon as I saw that, it was extremely shocking. I had never seen anything like that before. So for me, I was just like, what is like my heart dropped. I didn't know what to do. I immediately ran to Google. And also what followed was crazy abdominal pain. I didn't know where this pain was coming from. So at that point, I was going in and out of the hospitals from late 2021 all the way up until June of 2022. And I was going in and out of hospitals in Harlem. I was also going in and out of hospitals in like just Upper Manhattan area because that's where I lived. Also in the Bronx, and everyone was just telling me the same story. They were telling me that I was having a kidney stone, that it would eventually pass. And then one day I went into work. This was like right after my birthday. And I had that pain again, and I went into NYU because that was the closest hospital to my job. And that is when things sort of begin to turn around. I At that point, I was still going back and forth to that particular hospital because I felt like that was the space I had the best treatment and I felt like the most comfortable in. And I felt like they saw me while I was going back and forth in the hospitals from like late October of 2021 all the way up until 2022 of June. Um, I experienced a lot of discrimination. I felt extremely unseen. I felt like my pain wasn't being taken seriously. It was just an extremely hard place to have this pain in your body that you're trying to communicate out, and then you feeling like it's not being fully received or it's taken fully serious, or, maybe, I don't know. It was a very complicated space at that time. Um, but eventually I got connected with Dr. Wysock at NYU. And at that point, things began to really turn around. He diagnosed me with FH deficiency kidney cancer. And I went into emergency surgery, where they removed my left kidney. At that point, I had also lost my job, and so much other things was like happening in life. I'm 32, and as a young adult, like you have like a lot of things going on in life. You have your work life, you have your relationship, you have, your health, your physical, and just like the pressures of just growing up and becoming a young man and living in New York. And, so I was juggling with a lot at that time. And I lost my job, and that was extremely hard for me. But while I was in a hospital, right after I had my surgery, I started looking for a new job because nothing stops me. And I was just like, you know what, like this isn't going to kill me. I'm Something is going to come up. I don't know how fast I'm going to heal. I don't know what exactly is going to happen with my body, like how things are going to work. But I know I live in New York. I still have rent. I still have a family to take care of and to support. It got to a point where I had told my doctors that, my biggest challenge at this time, because, okay, so after I had the surgery, I didn't do chemo or any treatment after that because at that point, the cancer was completely gone. It was submerged into the kidney. So when they removed the kidney, I was told it was gone. So there was no treatment done. And then about 3 months later, I was diagnosed again with the same cancer. And at that point is when I started to do treatment. Um, and yeah, like it was just, it was just extremely challenging, having to not do treatment and then come back and then do treatment this time around. Yeah. At that point, after I started doing treatment, I told the doctors that I was experiencing some crazy, just like mental challenges. And, my mental was like the biggest challenge at that point. And once I said that, then they were like, they were like, all right, well, we have cancer care, and they directed me to cancer care. And that's when I started all of my therapy that I'm in now. And, honestly, it has been extremely um, helpful. It has been, um, you know, the thing that has helped me survive and continue on. Um, you know, being able to speak to other cancer patients was such a just tremendous thing in my journey. Um, and it has been a great help in my healing. So yeah, cancer care was an extremely help, was an extreme help.
Thank you so much, Van. Our next speaker is Julia, who's a nurse working in the NYU Langone emergency room. She was diagnosed with stage 1 colon cancer through preventive screening in June of 2023 and had a bowel resection completed at NYU on June 30th of 23. Since then, she's been able to return to work and to resume her life with a few minor changes. We're really excited to hear Julia's story. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you all for also sharing your stories. It's really a really nice place to be with all of you and hear your courageous tales. So Yeah, as was nicely stated, I'm the clinical resource nurse in the emergency department at NYU. I've been a nurse in the ER for about 10 years, and previously somewhere else before that. And so how I kind of came about this cancer journey is I definitely have very strong genetic history in colon cancer. My father was 45 when he passed away from colon cancer. He was 43, almost 44, I guess, when he was diagnosed initially, and he had a bowel resection. He was good for a year, and then it came back and was quite aggressive, and he tried treatment and passed away 6 months later. So knowing that, in addition, all of my aunts and uncles on that side have had colon cancer. I have two uncles, an aunt, and my abuelita, my dad's mom on that side, had like, I don't know, 4 bowel resections, I think, in her life, but made it to her 70s. So it was definitely more like I always knew it would happen, but I kind of thought it would maybe be a bit later. I'm 33. I was 32 when I was diagnosed. And so fortunately for preventative medicine, honestly, I think I don't know, I think nurses are kind of bad patients sometimes. And there's probably plenty of opportunities to listen to symptoms that I ignored and should have, and probably should have had a primary care doctor at that point. But I did go to my preventative screening. I started when I was 27 with my first colonoscopy. I went when I was 32, and kind of just expected it to be, as per usual, and woke up from propofol with some unfortunate news. And they let me know that they found a mass in my colon. It was pretty large. It was about 8 centimeters, so like the size of like a baseball, in my colon. And so that was obviously quite a surprise, just that it was at that extent. They said, well, did you have any symptoms? And I had been dizzy for like a year, but I thought it was inner ear issues, and I was going for like vestibular rehab. Didn't think anything more of it. And my hemoglobin was very anemic, it turned out, because my hemoglobin was so low from the tumor. So that explained it. But so I pretty quickly got in touch with my team, which I am so grateful for. Dr. Oberstein, my oncologist, and then Dr. Bashar Safar, who's the head of colorectal surgery at NYU. And I was so fortunate to end up in their care. And I had a bowel resection. They removed it. I am incredibly grateful that, though it was a very large tumor, I think even the doctors were very surprised it didn't spread further. And so the outcome was pretty good with that. I was inpatient for a few days at NYU, recovering. I think another part of the journey that kind of added to it is we weren't sure, because the lymph nodes take a while to come back, if it had spread to the lymph nodes. And if it had, then I likely would have needed chemotherapy. And we kind of thought I would, honestly, everybody did. So I started immediately with like IVF. So yeah, I started doing injections for hormones 10 days after surgery, and then had egg retrieval about 10 days after that. So just a couple of weeks after a bowel resection, I went back in for, it was obviously more minor, but for egg retrieval. But I think just the whole addition of everything together definitely threw me through a loop. And I think I underestimated having all those hormones and everything as part of the process that I don't think I really saw coming. But we did some genetic testing, because anytime you're diagnosed under a certain age, they do genetic testing. I was not surprised at all. They found I had Lynch syndrome. If you've heard of it, it's just a genetic mutation. There's about 5 strands of them, and one of the highest risks is colon cancer. It's the most prevalent, and I have 2 of the strands, so lucky for that. but I honestly wasn't a surprise. I kind of figured that at this point. But it just does really play to really, really close monitoring for the rest of my life, which is okay. This is just like a new normal that I'm grateful for. And so, that means colonoscopies every year for the rest of my life, with the addition of high risk of endometrial and cervical cancers. So following up closely with GYN. And fortunately, so I had my surgery, my bowel resection on June 30th, which is I think next week and a few change. My scope was last week, and they found 4 small polyps, but they were able to remove them, so nothing too concerning. So that was really good news, and I'm very much looking forward to kind of trying to take back the summer that last year really didn't go according to plan. I think some of the difficulties that I had with this was, I think probably, as anyone understands, just the mental component of things. I just working through. I think it's still a work in progress. I agree with Van Don that therapy, newly to me, has kind of helped work through some of the anxieties. My anxiety kind of built up to the point that I started getting alopecia. So that was another little surprise. I just lost some clumps of hair, but it's okay. Could be much worse. And it seems to be regrowing. It's just the interesting hair phase to get to go through, but it's okay. But I think just that, and when people say, trust your body when trying to address symptoms that you have, I think that's been a change for me. Is I clearly ignored symptoms for probably a year. And so trying to pay attention to what my body is saying going forward, it's tough, because like, what is listen to your body? Is it every ache and pain is you address it and freak out and call a doctor, or is it okay, rationalizing, thinking logically, and kind of taking a breath and working through it one step at a time? And I think that's been a work in progress for me. But I think I'm hoping that I'll get there. And I think my last part of it is just the amount of gratitude I had with not only the team that at NYU, Oberstein, and Dr. Khan is my GI doctor now, and Dr. Safar, I feel like I owe my life to. But I realized the incredible circumstances that, despite it wasn't an ideal situation, but I really was put in so many good aspects of it, of the support through my colleagues, through my friends, through my family, and the incredible team that I had, and that there continue to be understanding of me when I freak out with every abdominal ache and pain now, that they know to work through it with me. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm back to work. I didn't think that enough was going on, so I started a new job 2 months after I went back to work. I decided to go for a new role and go for clinical resource nurse and just throw more in the mix. So maybe putting less on my plate next time would have been smarter, but figure a little distraction was good. Keeping busy for sure. I think, if anything, it just made it so much clearer how much I appreciate my friends and my relationships. My mom, I mean, that was no question how great she was. My boyfriend, who we've been together for 5 years, and I don't think he saw this coming either. But I think it made us stronger, because I feel like we can really get through anything at this point. But I think it just really, I don't know, had my friendships and my relationships grow even deeper, just in appreciating having each other and being there, and everything that they did for me was just so meaningful. So I think that I know I definitely inspired a lot of colonoscopies this year. I will say that I've had so many people tell me that they got colonoscopies because of me. So,
That's beautiful. I'm sure you're saving lives, and it was really so lovely of you to thank your team. But I can tell you that as an NYU person, I very much thank you for being an NYU nurse and, you know, being one of our special people here. So wishing you good health and thank you for that beautiful story.
Thank you so much.
Next, I'm going to introduce Susan, who's a 46-year-old mom of 2 teenagers, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a friend, and a neighbor. She's living her best ordinary life in Brooklyn, where she was born and raised, and for 44 years, her life was not extraordinary. She felt normal. She tackles life by making to-do lists, and when she got cancer, that was added to the list. Now being a survivor has been added to the list as well. Susan, we're interested to hear your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Myers. Hi, everybody. I'm going to start off today with setting the scene. Imagine it being Halloween 2022. I convinced my son that he should dress up as soy sauce, and I dressed up as his sushi. And we trick-or-treated for hours. At the end of the night, I got a call from my gynecologist. I had just finally, after she had urged me for years, gotten my very first mammogram at age 44. The reason I actually went to get the mammogram is because I had lost my mom to lung cancer in June. And she'd gone through 2.5 years of a very big battle and eventually lost her battle. So I had said to myself, and I had said to her oncologist, yes, I will do my mammogram. And also they had tested her for genetic mutations. And I said, I will also do that. So I gave myself 3 months. And in September of 2022, I started taking all the tests. At the end of trick-or-treating, the gynecologist tried to tell me something, but I couldn't hear her. And I said, Dr. Betsy, please call me back tomorrow. The next day, I got a call from the genetic mutation results, which said that I was positive for PALB2, which is a genetic mutation that my mother also had. And it increases my risks for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, pancreatic cancer, you name it, I've got it. So I was positive for the gene. And then they told me I had a very suspicious mammogram. Fast forward through a lot of MRIs, a lot of CAT scans, numerous doctor's appointments. In February 2023, I had a double mastectomy with Dr. Axelrod. That was the first of 3 major surgeries during that year. After the double mastectomy, I was at plastics every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks so that they could give me new boobs, because Dr. Axelrod told me that at age 44, you should have boobs. And so I did. And I had to put in expanders, and that was the most uncomfortable feeling in the world. After that, I had the implants and recovered from the implants, but I had to continue my gene mutation journey. I had to see the internists, I had to see everybody. I have 11 different specialists at NYU. As it turns out, when I went to see the Dr. Pastori, who's my gynecologic oncologist, I hadn't tested positive for any cancers yet, and nothing showed irregular. But I'd already had 2 teenagers, and I made the decision then to be really aggressive, as I was with the breast cancer. I'm actually not a very good medical person, so I can't tell you what stage I had, where it was, what's going on. I just know that they told me I had cancer, and I said, take everything. With Dr. Pastori, she said, well, would you consider hysterectomy? And I said, yes, I'm finished having children. So I said, sign me up. She took out 2 ovaries, 2 fallopian tubes, my uterus, my cervix. And after a lot of negotiation, the week before, for some reason, I had taken an MRI for Dr. Janik, who's the pancreatic specialist, they called and told me that my pancreas was fine, but that I should be in tremendous pain and that I had appendicitis and I should check myself into the hospital right away. And I said, but I feel no pain. I just gone out to dinner with my friends the night before. So I said, you're crazy. This is not happening. But Dr. Pathori and I made a deal that when she was in there, if the appendix was inflamed, she would take it out. So she took out 7 organs for me in one day. That's my whole cancer surgery journey. Age 44 was a disastrous year for me. 3 surgeries, lots of recovery. But what I really wanted to focus on today was survivorship and what that really meant to me. I will say a couple of little things that friends of mine did for me that really made recovering easier was after my first surgery, I couldn't take a shower, I couldn't wash my hair, and I was struggling with that. I just felt really gross. So a friend came by and took me to the hair salon, and she was very clear to them that I was unwell and I needed clean hair. So we sat there for 30 minutes and they washed my hair and I felt so much better. That same friend, the day I came back from my first surgery, I was really upset because I had been doing so well with my Apple Watch and getting like my move streak going and closing my rings every day. And I couldn't close my rings. And I was really upset that I was going to lose my streak. So she put my watch on and she closed my rings for me for the day, just so I could have my streak. And I'm going to say today, I have a 1,256-day streak, thanks to her keeping it up for the one day. But I didn't let any of the surgeries keep me down. I closed my own rings every other day from that. She did it for me one time. I only allowed myself to cry maybe 4 or 5 times and asking, why me? Why did I have to get the mutation? Why did I lose my mom? And also because I have a young daughter, she needs to be checked because she has a 50% chance of getting this mutation. And I would say, well, why my daughter? Because that's always in the back of my head. But Dr. Smith, the geneticist, said something very important to me. And she said, the mutation that I have is really a later onset. So we are going to let my daughter live her life. She's going to graduate high school. She's going to graduate college, hopefully get a job, find a partner for life. And after she's a little bit settled, we'll check her so that she doesn't have something in the back of her mind and worrying all the time. Because I didn't find out about my mutation until age 44. I don't want her to have to think about potentially being positive at a very young age. So those are the little things. I will say that throughout my journey, it's really important to have a really good support system, really good friends, and I'm very lucky to have that. They have not treated me any differently. They hold me to anything I say. They make me, carry things. They treat me as if I was just a regular person. But what they did do that really was helpful is taking turns. I always had sort of an escort to the doctor, and not just going to the doctor. We would make a fun day out of it. We would go to see, the breast surgeon or or my dermatologist, oncologist, and we would make a plan. Sometimes we would go shopping after. Sometimes we would eat at a really yummy restaurant after, just so it didn't seem so medical. Everything was so medical. And now it's been a year and 4 months since my surgery. So I guess that was the day that I was cancer free. But I hate going to the doctor. I actually never went to the doctor before this. Actually, when I was 40, the gynecologist gave me a script for the mammogram, and I said, well, I'm not 45, and I put it in the recycling bin. And I didn't think about it again until my mother's oncologist told me that I really had to focus on me because of my genetics. And so every time I go to the doctor, I get a 6-month pass, and I beg for a 12-month pass, but I don't get it. So I'm back every 6 months to see everybody again. And in the meantime, I try to just do the things that ordinary, everyday things. Get my kids to school, make sure they get to their activities on time. If there's a concert that we want to see, we go, and our friends come with us. I have not dwelled on the fact that I am a cancer patient and then a cancer survivor, although I do take 1 pill a day. I was very fortunate that I did not have to do any radiation or chemo. And my goal is every day, for when somebody calls me and says, how are you doing? My answer should be, I'm normal. Everything is fine. If I have something to tell you, that means something is going on. I just want to tell you that I'm normal. And the one thing that I like to always tell people is, when they ask me about my situation, is I feel like I'm the healthiest sick person that they know. And that's just how I live my everyday. I think what really helped is, the advice is always bring a friend. Because my very first appointment that I had, where I didn't know, I just had a suspicious mammogram, and I went to the doctor, and I had gotten a second mammogram, and the technician was really scanning so hard that I knew something was wrong. And I left that second mammogram already crying. I said, I can't do this alone. You have to do it with somebody, and somebody that you trust. And you really have to be honest and open. I know it's hard to talk about it, but I told everybody, I said, this is what happened. If you're honest and open, the people that you can depend on will sort of come to the forefront, and you know who you should ask to go to the doctor with you. Those are the people that check in with you, so you can identify those people.
That's a beautiful and absolutely important piece of advice. And I'm so happy that you're back to your everyday list of things, and wishing you, from all of us, the very best of health.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Our next speaker is Johann Schweiger. I hope I said your name right. And he is a classical singer, composer, and educator. And maybe if we clap enough, you will sing for us. Well, we'll see.
Well, I was born and raised in the countryside surrounding Munich, Germany. Okay, so I graduated from the University in Munich of Music and Theater, and I also met my wife there. And my career has included the opera, the oratorio. It's kind of concertized stage version of the opera, and concert and musical theater stages. And I actually started singing at the age of 9, so very early. So from very early, from this tender age of 9, I felt my passion, my life was music, my voice. And prior to my diagnosis of stage 4 head and neck cancer, I was singing in Europe and the United States, and also began teaching in New York City, in the New York City conservatories and university. And one of the institutions I taught was the Tisch at NYU. And so I realized I loved teaching as well, almost as much as I loved singing. And life was expanding and good. And as I was preparing for a premiere performance in New York City, I began to feel an unusual fatigue and hoarseness. I had difficulties swallowing, and it was an effort to maintain a clear sound. I mention this because as a professional singer, a clear tone was a daily endeavor and accomplishments. So you worked daily on the voice. And during a general rehearsal, I remember this very well, I could no longer deny my concern or my wife's repeated petition to see somebody. So my primary care physician at this time led me to the successful treatment by the expert team of Dr. Mark Persky. He is Professor Emeritus of Otolaryngology at NYU Langone, and Dr. Kenneth Hu, which is a co-director of Head and Neck, of the Head and Neck Center of Oncology of the Perlman Cancer Center at Langone, NYU. And there are many, many personal developments when I walked through this journey. And I call it today a journey to discovering myself in situation I never thought I would walk through. And that was 11 years ago. And I'm very proud to say that every year, still to this day, I go for my checkups and everything. So everything is in perfect order. But I still go there because I just love the community and I love the nurturing effect and the care, what I got, especially from the nurses, Cassie concert, even from the front desk with Linda, and people just took you in and said, okay, that's what you got. So let's get your best foot forward and get you back on track to live your best life again. So I enjoyed this. So 11 years ago. Well, and through this journey led by this exceptional team of doctors, clinicians, and complementary care practitioners, today I'm on the other side. An entire new world has opened up for me. Facing the very real possibility of losing my voice, my instrument, I had to change my mental attitude and the way I had viewed life. My priority shifted. And to my grace, I was surrounded by an incredible caring team. I cannot repeat this more often. And a wife who did not leave my side. And I chose to show up as well. So as we all know and have experienced, and all the testimonies I listened so carefully, showed that treatment and recovery is not a straight path forward. And I have spent my entire life in music. And while music is still a constant, my recovery has allowed me to discover a deeper meaning of my life as a human being and as an artist. While I still work every day on my voice, on a clear tone, I am deeply inspired to create projects that have purpose and meaning for us all. It became clear to me that the real Jan is the energy and attitude expressed through the tone, not the tone by itself. It is one thing to know that, and yet another to experience it. Today, my wife and I co-direct an organization that uses performing arts event and education to bridge cultural divides. Our mission is to help discover and enhance the voices of us all, raising awareness through our history, both personal and universal, can be viewed through a variety of lenses. On June 6, just recent 2 weeks ago, I re-entered the New York City stage with a concert at Lincoln Center called All the Love in the World. Together with my wife, an New York City jazz trio, and 3 students of ours who are emerging artists, we embraced artistic co-creation. Our message, the enduring power of love and the deeper meaning that love does not rule. Love does not rule, but love cultivates. And I felt, now I'm home. And my journey from diagnosis to treatment to recovery have led me to the place home. So in hindsight, when I think back, this ordeal that for me and probably for everybody is life-threatening stands like a metaphor that allowed me to venture deeper into myself and came out with a new knowledge, wisdom. We opened up an educational system, we called it evolved vocology, and the study of voice, the idea of voice, the science of voice, but evolved is because we all evolve. You know, life for me is change, and that's a fact. That's a fact of life, which is change. And so we all evolve. And so evolved vocology is constantly work on this part in ourselves that moves us forward. And through the caring and nurturing care of Langone, with my expert team, Dr. Hugh and Mark Persky, and the beautiful staff and practitioners of the complementary care, and the love of my wife, and everything, I felt, yeah, I am on the other side for sure, and I am home now.
Johan, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for your story. And I think we're starting to really see a motif here that the key things to successful and meaningful survivorship seem to really be a great support system, a great medical team. And I will just say that all of the doctors that you've mentioned, that all of you have mentioned are really, you know, top-notch, wonderful physicians. And then, of course, a sense of purpose. So one quick question before we let you go.
Yes, there was a very, very interesting moment. In one of my lowest points in this journey, I was praying and I thought, okay, now if this illness is taking away my instrument, because it was just too close to comfort, then what will I do in my life? What can I do? My entire identity, my entire personality, everything was surrounded by those musical chimes and things. So anyway, I went to bed and I woke up. I had this dream of an incredible melody that came to me. And I said, melody, whatever. So I got up, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I went on the piano, put a paper and a pen and jolted down the music with the harmonic coordinates underneath and went back to bed. Next morning, I got up and I looked at my scribble, but I could detect enough that I could recall the melody and was able to write it down. A week later, had the strong need because I taught and I still teach a lot of rabbis and cantors, and they were in Crown Heights at the time. And I knew it had to be something about soul and oneness. And I knew it had to be in Hebrew and in English. I don't speak Hebrew, but I didn't know why I knew it was Hebrew. Anyway, they gave me a morning prayer, and the morning prayer in Hebrew fit the musical notes to the T. So I called this song Mondo Pacem. But what I got out of that was if one sense or one identity of voice would leave me, my inner voice of creativity would never cease to exist. And that was a moment that calmed me down, that helped me, and I said, you are on your way.
That's just beautiful. Thank you. And we all wish you many, many, many years of beautiful music in your life.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Our last speaker is Arlie, who is a 24-year-old Mexican-American woman who enjoys good Korean drama and spending time with her loved ones. She hopes one day to travel all over Mexico and enjoy learning about other cultures. Arlie, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. Prior to my diagnosis, I was diagnosed with stage 3C melanoma. It was something no one ever expected. I didn't expect it, especially growing up being told or always hearing ignorant comments of the more melanin you have in your skin, the more protected you are from the sun, or I'm tan. I'm naturally of a darker skin tone, so I don't need sunscreen. So I spent various summers from the ages of 7 to from the age of 7 all the way up until 17, every summer, 6 weeks in Mexico, no sun protection. I would go to the beach with friends, get a sunburn, and I assumed that would be okay since I come from a long line of agricultural workers. My family back home, they all work in farms, they're peanut farmers. My parents, they used to work in the sun when they were younger. No one expected this, but in August of 2023, I was told that the biopsy done of a mole I had on the side of my face came back positive for melanoma. It was just the local dermatologist who conducted the biopsy, and as soon as he told me, I felt my world crash. I had just graduated college. I had just gotten hired for a full-time position as a teacher, and I felt like everything was just being snatched away from me, and I just didn't know how to react. But the dermatologist told me that he knew of a surgeon who could get me in for a surgery next week. I just had to get these MRI scans, CT scans in, and as soon as I got home, I called my local, this was before I found NYU. Before I started receiving care at NYU, it was just a local hospital in my town. I called, they told me I couldn't get, they told me I couldn't get any MRIs or CT scans done until my insurance approved of said testing. But they said it could take up until 2 weeks. And in that moment, I felt a need to run, like just run and like rush this whole process. I was like, I can't wait 2 weeks. And then I called the surgeon that my dermatologist had recommended, and and unfortunately he didn't take my insurance. He too was a part of the local hospital up in my town. So I felt like everything was just crumbling down. I felt hopeless, and I felt like I was done. I was like, I'm done. There's nothing else for me to do. But luckily I had my parents with me throughout the whole thing. My mom said, sorry, I'm a very emotional person. And my mother, she said, you can't let this get you down. Let's go. Let's keep on going. Let's keep it pushing. Let's find another doctor. I looked for an oncologist up at that local hospital as well. That oncologist told me that I wasn't able to get surgery due to the location, that it was by my ear. He said there's no way you can get surgery. Another punch. I was like, what am I gonna do? He said radiation therapy, chemotherapy is the only way you can get rid of that. And he said even then there's no hope. And we still didn't even know what stage it was. So I said, I'm not gonna let this. I was like, I'm not gonna trust someone who. I was like, if the dermatologist had told me I could get surgery, why is this oncologist telling me I can't get surgery? So I said, okay. At the time, I was still planning on working here in the city. And I said, you know what? I'm not even going to be in this town. Let me look somewhere else. Let me look in the city. I found NYU, and I immediately called and scheduled my CT scans, my MRI scans. And it was a Thursday. By Sunday, I had already scheduled both CT and MRIs. By Tuesday, I already had an appointment with a new oncologist, which is Dr. Maynard, and everything got done. And through everything, my family was there every single step of the way. Luckily, Dr. Maynard, yeah, she went through everything step by step, explained everything to me, explained what my type of cancer was, since I was very unfamiliar with it. I had no idea. Because of my family history, I wasn't sure if there was, if someone else had melanoma at some point, but there was no way of telling. So Dr. Maynard referred me to Dr. Friedman, who was the surgical oncologist, the following week. And then Dr. Friedman sent me to a plastic surgeon, Dr. Levine, who also worked on my surgery to remove the melanoma. And it all happened so quick, in less than a month. I had received a consultation. I had gotten the melanoma removed, essentially. And Dr. Friedman wanted, because melanoma tends to, I guess, spread to the lymph nodes, they tested my lymph nodes, they sent them out, and unfortunately there's still some remaining, but I am on targeted treatment, which is the best option for me. I don't think I would have been able to get through any of this if it weren't for my family, who were there from, sorry, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Who were there from the very beginning. I guess the only reason, or the only way I've been able to stay as positive as I have been is because of my parents. I have the most optimistic, the most resilient parents who have set such a great example, who, despite being unaware of my diagnosis, never let me see them. Never let me see them get down, but these are happy tears, sorry. And I am thankful to my to my oncology team. I'm thankful to everyone at NYU. From the beginning, everyone's always been very positive. And yeah. Thank you, sorry.
We're kind of towards the end, and I'd like to, I don't know if you can hear me, but there was a question from the audience, from one of the attendees, and I thought it was very good if we can get some input from everybody. Here's a question. How do you live with the constant new norms because your life is worse after treatment? I understand a positive attitude and my faith has been my anchor, but I'm drowning. What can we say to this person?
I think a major component is finding that new sense of purpose. Yes, you had a certain life or lifestyle, and you got hit with the cancer. The cancer has changed your lifestyle. Johan's expressed it very well too. You find a new purpose. Maybe I couldn't do something before, but now I could do something else. And I think it's that new purpose in life that keeps you going. That's the motivation to press on. I have things to do. I have to do this, I have to do that, I have a schedule, and you start thinking of maybe your purpose is giving back. That's the way I feel now. I want to give back to all those people who helped me. Maybe it's through seminars, maybe it's through writing my book, and all those things, helping people, the other survivors, get over that hump. And your question is a really good one because that is the thing that is one of the toughest parts. The doctors control the surgery, the doctors control the treatment. You're really out of control there. And when the treatment's all done, or even if it's ongoing, you're left with, okay, now what do I do? Who's the new me? Who's the new me after all this? As Van Dorn said, you start a new business. As Johan says, you see a whole new purpose to, still living your life of your love of music, maybe in a different way.
Yeah, and also I would like to say two things. Well, one is a physician, but one is also as a patient. First of all, never, never, never let the cancer totally define you, because I think that makes you very, very vulnerable. And I was diagnosed with cancer about 23 years ago, and I had surgery and chemo and radiation, the whole thing. But I also, how my coping was, I worked in milestones. My kids were very young at the time. And so I always said, here's the milestone I want to reach. The milestone was graduating from middle school, then seeing one of the kids go to a prom, then going to college. And I've just become a grandmother. So I think those are the kind of things that, everyone's individual, everyone's different. And you can have little things that you aspire to, but I think those are important things to keep in mind. Like sometimes you cheat a little bit. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to think about how I'm going to get to that other side, and then another side and then another side, and you keep going.
Isabella had raised her hand.
Yeah, I was going to agree with James where for me, I felt like while I was going through everything, I had decided to find like a new, not really purpose, but just like a very new hobby because I was recovering from the surgery in the hospital while the New York City Marathon was going on. And because for me, like my norm completely changed. I was supposed to be going to school and like living with my friends still, and I had to drop out of school, take a year off, just like do different surgeries and go to the hospital. And I had like doctor's appointments all the time. And when I was there and I saw like the marathon runners from the hospital, I was like, I'm going to do that next year. And then from 2023 to 2022 to 2023, that was like the thing that I worked on every single day, like going from walking around the hospital floor to like running the marathon the next year, which was really cool. But that I think really took my mind off of everything, and I raised money for cancer research. So it was like a 2-in-1 of giving back and like finding a new thing that really brought me joy. So I would say my norm now is a full 180, totally different of what I thought my norm would be last year. or like a year and a half ago, because my life is completely different, but in like good and bad ways almost. And you have control of like the good ways, because I couldn't really control the bad ways it was changing, but I could add good things. So I agree with the like finding a new type of purpose, or even just a hobby, honestly.
Thank you, Isabella. Van Don?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. I also just wanted to add that, I feel that it's important to, really focus on your journey and not lose focus of that, and not allow cancer to come in and knock your focus out. Trust your journey. And cancer does not define you. It doesn't. It feels extremely overwhelming at times and almost all the time. And it's difficult, it's heavy. But we evolve, and while I've been in this journey, I've evolved, and focusing on the journey has also made me grow into a stronger individual. And so, it's a lot of light, that comes out of this. And yeah, I think just focusing on your journey and trusting your journey is something else I wanted to add.
You. Johan?
Yeah, I think, the constant new norm, I would say if I view my journey is a stairway, and the stairway is made out of platforms. And I arrived at a platform. And I look at it where I was coming from, where I arrived. And then there's a diagnosis. You hang out on the platform, you recover, and you see the other stairway. And the curiosity makes you move forward till you reach the other one. And that's a new norm. And so it's always a new norm. But I realize no matter how tall the new norm is, there is no way back. There's always something that moves forward and onward. And that is a belief, an inner conviction that even strengthened in me very, very strongly during my treatment and recovery. And it helped me tremendously. Even now, I am on the other side to move forward in life. And for that, I am very, very grateful to my team and to everybody involved to help me to move through this journey.
And with that beautiful summary, I think that we will wrap up, and Dr. Axelrod, myself, and the entire team want to thank all of our attendants, and particularly everybody on the panel. It is so courageous to come out and share your beautiful, heartwarming, inspirational stories. You have sent a very powerful message of resilience, of a journey that, can happen to anybody. And while we hear these stories and see the way that you've sort of maintained your beautiful lives and dignity and hope and resilience, it really is heartwarming and has inspired so many people. So we look forward to your very good health in the future, to making strides in whatever you choose to do, whether it's business, music, or whatever floats your boat, so to speak. And most importantly, good health. Dr. Axelrod, did you want to say anything before we wrap up?
No, I just, this was a very impressive panel. We've been doing this for many years. This is a very, very impressive panel. I want to thank everybody talking about, life-changing events and trauma. And I think it's difficult to talk about. So thank you.
Good evening. Thanks, everyone.